The latest spoilers from The Young and the Restless for Tuesday, February 10th reveal a storyline that at first appears deceptively simple, yet quietly sets the stage for a far more destabilizing chain of events, beginning with Nick Newman being watched not by an enemy in the shadows, but by someone far closer and far more dangerous in her concern, his sister. Victoria Newman's decision to keep an eye on Nick is entirely understandable, even rational, given the turbulence surrounding the Newman family and the growing pattern of deception encircling them. Yet her vigilance also underscores a deeper truth about Genoa City, one in which surveillance is no longer an act of paranoia but a survival instinct. Victoria's concern is rooted not only in sibling loyalty but in a growing awareness that Nick, whether intentionally or not, is standing too close to multiple fault lines at once. Particularly as Victor Newman exposes Kane Ashby's ongoing con game and begins tightening his grip on anyone caught in the blast radius. Victor's unmasking of Kane's deception sends a shockwave through the family structure, because it confirms what many feared but few could prove: that Kane's recent maneuvers were never about rebuilding or redemption, but about manipulation dressed up as opportunity. This revelation heightens Victoria's anxiety, especially as Nick appears increasingly isolated, caught between loyalty to family and a moral compass that refuses to align neatly with Victor's hardline tactics. Victoria does not stalk her brother out of mistrust but out of fear that he is being positioned, once again, as collateral damage in a larger war he did not start and may not be equipped to finish. In Genoa City, observation is power, and Victoria understands that missing a single move could mean losing Nick to a scheme already several steps ahead. Running parallel to this tension is the quieter but potentially more explosive storyline involving Claire Grace Newman, whose actions may prove just as consequential despite their subtlety. Claire's invitation to Los Angeles with Holden Novak appears innocuous on the surface, framed as a friendly getaway between two people who insist on defining their relationship as platonic. Yet Claire's deliberate hints of romantic fascination suggest a calculated ambiguity, one designed to disarm rather than confess. She understands the power of implication, especially when attraction is suggested but never confirmed, and she uses that uncertainty to her advantage, allowing others to project their own assumptions while she maintains plausible innocence. Claire's true motivation, however, lies not with Holden himself but with what he represents: access. With no pressing obligations anchoring her in Genoa City, Claire turns her attention toward Audra Charles, a figure whose secrets have long hovered just beneath the surface. Claire's curiosity is not idle, nor is it driven by jealousy or rivalry alone, but by a strategic instinct that has become increasingly pronounced in her behavior. She senses that Audra's hidden truths are not merely personal but potentially combustible, capable of detonating relationships, reputations, and perhaps even legal standing if exposed under the wrong circumstances. The tension escalates when Holden and Claire cross paths with Audra, placing all three in close proximity at a moment when discretion matters most. Holden's reassurance to Audra that their secret will remain strictly between them is delivered with confidence, yet it betrays a fundamental misunderstanding of the dynamics at play. Secrets do not exist in isolation in Genoa City, they exist within networks of leverage, desire, and pressure. Holden believes that loyalty alone is sufficient to contain what he knows, but he fails to account for Claire's perceptiveness and her ability to create situations in which truth is coaxed rather than stolen. Claire does not extract information through confrontation or force, but through timing, emotional vulnerability, and moral discomfort. She understands that people reveal the most when they believe they are choosing to do so, and she positions herself accordingly, waiting for the moment when Holden's desire to appear honest, honorable, or sympathetic overrides his promise to Audra. This approach raises a troubling possibility that Claire's actions could push Holden into an ethical dilemma with tangible legal consequences. If Holden is maneuvered into disclosing information that implicates Audra in wrongdoing, whether corporate or personal, the fallout could extend far beyond damaged trust, triggering investigations, lawsuits, or criminal exposure that no one involved initially anticipated. Such a scenario would not only compromise Holden but also implicate Claire herself, transforming her from curious observer into active catalyst. The danger lies not in malicious intent but in escalation, because once secrets begin to surface, control evaporates. Claire may believe she is managing the situation, yet every revelation increases the velocity of the domino effect she is setting in motion. Audra's potential exposure could ripple outward, ensnaring Victor's broader machinations, intersecting with Kane's already fragile standing, and drawing Nick and Victoria even deeper into a conflict they are desperately trying to contain. What makes this storyline particularly compelling is its realism, because it hinges on human behavior rather than grand gestures or overt villainy. No one sets out to destroy anyone else outright. Instead, each character pursues self-protection, clarity, or advantage, unaware that their choices are converging toward a single point of collapse. Claire's deception is not loud or theatrical, but quiet and patient, making it all the more dangerous. Victoria's surveillance is motivated by love, yet it risks becoming control. Victor's exposure of Kane's fraud is justified, yet it reinforces his image as a man who rules through intimidation rather than trust. As Monday's episode unfolds, the audience is left to consider whether Claire truly understands the magnitude of what she is unleashing, or whether she, like so many before her, believes she can navigate the edge of the storm without being pulled in. In The Young and the Restless, the most devastating consequences often emerge not from outright betrayal, but from curiosity left unchecked and secrets treated as currency. If Claire succeeds in prying open Audra's hidden world through Holden, the resulting collapse may not be immediate, but it will be inevitable, and when it comes, it will not discriminate between the guilty and the merely adjacent. The next wave of The Young and the Restless developments tightens the pressure from multiple directions at once. And what makes the situation especially volatile is that the show is now stacking emotional confusion on top of corporate warfare and physical danger, letting personal impulses collide with power plays in a way that almost guarantees collateral damage. On one side, Noah Newman's next move looks like the kind of small, intimate decision that daytime dramas love to treat as just romance, yet the emotional stakes are far heavier than that. Because Noah isn't simply dealing with an ex returning to Los Angeles, he's dealing with the humiliating emptiness of being abandoned without a real ending, without a conversation, without the dignity of understanding what he did wrong or what Sienna Bacall was truly running from. The fact that Sienna ended their relationship through a letter and disappeared without explanation is the sort of wound that does not heal through time alone, because it creates a permanent echo in the mind, a loop where Noah replays every moment, searching for clues that might not exist, trying to fill in the missing reasons with his own fears. And each guest becomes its own kind of poison. Sienna's reappearance doesn't bring closure, it rips open the unresolved question that Noah tried to bury. And that is why he is so disoriented, because the part of him that still loved her wants to believe there is an explanation that makes sense, while the part of him that is trying to grow up knows that some people don't offer explanations because they don't want to, or because the truth would reveal something ugly about their choices. Noah can't accept the idea that a person who mattered to him could leave like that without a single honest sentence, so his instinct is to pursue, to chase, to force the story to give him an ending it never offered. In that emotional state, following Sienna becomes more than physical stalking, it becomes Noah's attempt to reclaim power over his own memory, to stop feeling like a character who got written out of someone else's life without permission. Sharon Newman recognizes the danger in that mindset immediately, not because she is naive about love or believes in simple restraint, but because she knows her son's patterns and she knows how obsession grows from uncertainty. Sharon's efforts to convince Noah not to follow Sienna are working for now, and that detail matters, because it suggests Noah is still reachable, still capable of choosing dignity over compulsion, still willing to trust his mother's instincts even when his heart is screaming for answers. Sharon is not just giving advice, she is trying to prevent Noah from stepping into a moral trap where his pain justifies behavior that will later shame him. And she is also trying to protect him from the possibility that Sienna's return is connected to something darker than romance. Sharon has seen too many storylines in Genoa City where I just needed to know becomes the excuse that leads to the worst consequences, where a moment of surveillance becomes a chain reaction, where a private mess turns public, where a person who thinks they're only chasing truth ends up stumbling into something that can't be unseen. The fact that Sharon's persuasion is effective at the moment does not guarantee stability, though, because restraint born from reason can be shattered instantly by a single emotional trigger. Seeing Sienna laughing with someone else, hearing her name attached to a rumor, sensing that she is hiding a secret that explains everything but refuses to share it. Sharon is buying time, not solving the problem, and that time is crucial because the larger Newman storm is intensifying in parallel. While Noah's conflict is intimate and internal, Victor Newman's conflict with Kane Ashby is blunt, escalating, and potentially violent. And the spoilers suggest that Victor is about to do what he does best, expose a con, and then stand perfectly still while the fallout explodes around him. Victor's move to unmask Kane's deception is not presented as a clean victory, because the encounter between them does not go smoothly, and that is the most ominous detail of all. In the preview for next week, Kane appears unconscious on the ground, a visual that instantly reframes the conflict from corporate chess to something that feels like physical enforcement. Like consequences delivered not through contracts and board votes but through the raw reality of someone's body hitting the floor. When Adam Newman walks in and asks whether Kane is alive or dead, the question is not just dramatic, it's the kind of moment that forces the audience to confront what Victor has become willing to look like, regardless of what he actually did. The prevailing impression is that Kane is still alive, yet the image of him incapacitated is enough to create a narrative earthquake. Because in Genoa City perception is often more powerful than truth. Even if Victor did not kill Kane and does not appear worried, the fact that Adam witnesses the aftermath, and the fact that he will report what he saw to others, creates a dangerous pipeline of interpretation. People will hear Kane was on the ground, and they will fill in the rest with their own bias, their own fear of Victor, their own readiness to believe that he has finally crossed the line into gangster territory. This is where the storyline becomes especially ruthless in its logic, because it doesn't require Victor to commit a murder for the consequences to become fatal. All it requires is uncertainty, and Adam becomes the carrier of that uncertainty, walking into a room and out again with a piece of information that cannot be safely shared because the minute it leaves his mouth, it becomes something else. Adam's instinct will be to tell the truth, to warn others, to control the narrative before it controls him, yet every person he tells will reinterpret the same fact through their own agenda. Some will use it to paint Victor as a monster, some will use it to justify retaliating against Victor. Some will use it to pressure Adam, to demand loyalty, to force him into a side he does not want to choose. Adam's report could trigger a chain of events not because he intends harm, but because the Newman world is built on leverage, and Victor left Kane unconscious as leverage waiting to be weaponized. Even if Kane survives, he is rendered powerless in the moment. He cannot act, cannot defend himself, cannot rush to save the family he has already failed and lost. And that helplessness becomes symbolic. Kane's biggest tragedy here isn't only that Victor is exposing him, it's that Kane is running out of moves. The spoilers underscore that Kane cannot do anything to save his family right now. And that line carries emotional weight because it suggests the story is punishing him in the only language he understands, not business loss, not reputation loss, but the collapse of his identity as a protector, a husband, a father, a man who always believed he could talk his way out of consequences before they reached the people he loves. Victor, meanwhile, stands at the center of the storm with the kind of calm that is either confidence or sociopathy, and the show deliberately invites the audience to debate which one it is. Victor does not appear worried, and that composure is terrifying because it can be read two ways. Either Victor knows exactly what happened and knows it will not touch him, or Victor has reached a point where the moral implications no longer register. Even if he did not physically harm Kane, Victor is behaving like someone who understands that fear is a tool that works best when you never admit you are using it. He exposed Kane's con, and now he is letting the image of Kane on the ground do the rest of the work, because in a world obsessed with power, the person who looks unbothered by chaos often becomes the person everyone believes is responsible for it. That is why Adam's role becomes so pivotal. He is not just a witness, he is the hinge on which the town's reaction will swing. If Adam reports it with urgency and alarm, it becomes a scandal. If he reports it carefully, it becomes suspicion. If he hesitates, others will assume he is protecting Victor, and that assumption will invite even more pressure. Either way, the narrative momentum is clear, the event is not isolated, and the next phase will be defined by interpretation, accusation, and the desperate need for people to choose sides before they even know what they are choosing. What makes this all feel even more unstable is the way these storylines can mirror and amplify each other thematically. Noah's temptation to follow Sienna is about chasing an answer that might destroy him, while Adam's temptation to report what he saw is about releasing information that might destroy everyone. Sharon's effort to stop Noah is essentially an effort to prevent a personal domino effect, while Victor's exposure of Cain is actively triggering a public domino effect. And Cain lying unconscious becomes an airy metaphor for what happens when ego, deception, and revenge finally collide. Someone ends up unable to move, unable to speak, unable to shape the story anymore, while others rush in to narrate his downfall for him. If the show leans into its own logic, then the next episodes won't simply ask, did Victor do it, or will Noah break and follow Sienna, but will instead ask the harsher question that defines Genoa City. What does it mean when the people who love you try to protect you, and their protection becomes the very thing that traps you? Sharon can only hold Noah back for so long if Sienna's presence keeps pressing on the bruise she left behind. And Adam can only manage the truth for so long before the truth becomes a weapon in someone else's hands. By the time the dust begins to shift toward spring, when the thaw metaphorically arrives and people can no longer hide behind winter's numbness, this storyline has the potential to explode in a way that feels both inevitable and deeply personal. Noah's next move is restraint for now, but restraint under emotional stress is fragile. Victor's next move is exposure, but exposure without accountability invites retaliation. Cain's next move may be impossible if he remains weakened, and that powerlessness is exactly what will invite opportunists to strike while he cannot defend himself. Adam's next move is communication, but communication in Genoa City is never neutral. It is always strategy, always risk, always a spark near gasoline. So the real hook is not simply whether Cain wakes up or whether Noah follows Sienna, but whether the Newmans can survive a moment where everyone is watching everyone else. Where love looks like surveillance, where truth looks like betrayal, and where the person most confident in his control, Victor, may finally learn that control is not the same thing as safety. Especially when the people around him begin to realize that fear has a limit, and that limit often arrives right after someone hits the floor.